The Galactic Council had existed for over 12 million years. Every species that achieved space travel eventually found their way to the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Xenthos Prime. Here, the oldest civilizations made decisions that shaped the future of 100,000 star systems. The Valari, ancient beings of pure energy, had founded the Council when the universe was still young. The Krath Empire, massive insect warriors standing 3 meters tall, controlled the military arm. The Syndicate of Morax handled trade and commerce with their calculating minds. And there were hundreds of other species, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. When humans arrived at the galactic stage, the Council barely noticed. Earth was a small blue planet on the outer edge of an unremarkable spiral arm. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. By galactic standards, they were infants. They had no fleet to speak of, no ancient weapons, and no special abilities that made them stand out. The Valari Elder, a shimmering cloud of golden light named Zethera, watched the human ambassador walk into the Great Assembly Hall for the first time. The human was small, fragile-looking, with soft skin that could be torn by the weakest of predators. His name was Ambassador William Chen, and he wore a simple black suit that seemed almost comical compared to the elaborate robes and armors of other species. "Another primitive species," commented Admiral Krex of the Krath Empire. His massive mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Give them 1,000 years, and they might build ships worth mentioning. They breed quickly," observed the Morax Trade Minister, a gray-skinned being with 7 eyes. "Perhaps they will be useful as laborers." The Council granted humanity a small sector of space, barely enough for a dozen colonies. It was considered generous, given how young and weak humans appeared. The representatives of the Krath Empire joked that they could conquer Earth with a single patrol ship. The Valari saw no threat in these short-lived mammals. The Morax calculated that humans would remain economically irrelevant for at least 5,000 years. But something strange happened in the following decades. Human ships began appearing in unusual places. They explored regions of space that other species avoided. They visited dead worlds, collected samples from gas giants, and sent probes into the hearts of dying stars. When other species asked what they were doing, humans simply said they were curious. "They waste their resources on science projects," Admiral Krex told the Council. "While we build warships, they study rocks and atmospheric patterns. They are no threat." The Morax noticed something peculiar. Humans were buying massive quantities of raw materials. Metals, crystals, exotic elements, anything they could get their hands on. They paid well and asked few questions. When trade ministers questioned what these materials were for, human merchants just smiled and said it was for construction projects. Nobody thought to investigate further. After all, what could humans possibly build that would concern the great powers of the galaxy? Their technology was centuries behind the Krath Empire. Their ships were slow, their weapons were weak, and their population was tiny compared to the ancient civilizations. Captain Lyra Vasquez commanded the human exploration vessel Curiosity. She had been mapping a distant nebula when her sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. A fleet of ships, larger than anything she had ever seen, was approaching from beyond the galactic rim. These were not ships from any known species. They were dark, angular vessels covered in strange markings that seemed to absorb light itself. She sent an emergency transmission to Earth and to the Galactic Council. The response from the Council was dismissive. Unknown threats from beyond the rim were fairy tales told to frighten young species. The Krath Empire had protected the galaxy for millions of years, and no threat had ever emerged from the void between galaxies. But humans took the warning seriously. Deep within the Sol system, in places no alien had ever been allowed to visit, messages were sent to massive construction facilities hidden in the darkness of space. Workers who had spent their entire careers building something impossible finally received the order they had been waiting for. Meanwhile, the unknown fleet continued its approach. Captain Vasquez followed it at a safe distance, documenting everything her sensors could detect. There were over 10,000 ships, each one larger than the biggest Krath battleship, and at the center of the formation, she detected something that her computer could not identify. Something so massive that it bent light around its surface like a small black hole. The Galactic Council finally began to pay attention when the unknown fleet entered the outer territories. 3 Krath patrol squadrons were sent to intercept and establish communication. They never returned. The last transmission showed weapons fire that cut through Krath shields like they were made of paper. Panic spread through the Council. Emergency sessions were called. The Krath Empire mobilized its entire military. The Valari consulted their ancient records, searching for any mention of these dark invaders. The Morax calculated survival probabilities and began moving their assets to safer locations. Ambassador William Chen requested permission to address the Council. Many species wondered what humans could possibly contribute to this crisis. They had no army worth mentioning, no weapons that could scratch the paint on a Krath battleship, and no experience with large-scale warfare. "We have something to show you," Ambassador Chen said calmly. "Something we have been building since we first joined your community. We knew this day would come. We read the ancient records that you, Valari, forgot about. We found warnings carved into dead worlds that the craft dismissed as primitive art. We understood that something terrible slept beyond the edge of the galaxy. The council representatives looked at each other in confusion. What could humans possibly have built in 50 years that would matter against an enemy that destroyed craft warships effortlessly? We request that you join our observation fleet at the following coordinates, Chen continued. What you see there will change everything you believe about humanity. Admiral Krex laughed. His massive body shook with amusement. What will we see, little human? A dozen rusty freighters held together with hope and primitive welding. Your species is brave but foolish. Chen smiled. It was not the smile of a man about to be humiliated. It was the smile of someone who held the greatest secret in the history of the galaxy. Come and see, he said simply. Come and see what we have been building in the dark. The observation fleet gathered at the coordinates Ambassador Chen had provided. Admiral Krex brought his personal flagship, the Eternal Claw, a vessel that had destroyed 1,000 enemy ships over its long career. The Valari sent their most ancient observer, a being so old that it remembered the first days of the council. Representatives from 40 different species arrived in ships of every size and shape, all curious about what humans claimed to have built. The coordinates led to a region of empty space far from any star system. There was nothing here except darkness and cold vacuum. Many representatives assumed this was some kind of joke, or perhaps a desperate bluff from a species facing extinction. This is pointless. Admiral Krex transmitted to the other ships. There is nothing here. The humans have wasted our time during a crisis. We should return to defend our worlds. Ambassador Chun's voice came through the communication channel. Please wait. They are coming. Who is coming? Demanded the Morax Trade Minister. Our defenders, Chen replied. The ships we built to protect everyone. The ships we hoped we would never need to use. For several long minutes nothing happened. Some species began powering up their engines preparing to leave. Others sent angry messages to the human ambassador, accusing him of deception during the galaxy's darkest hour. Then the sensors started screaming. Every ship in the observation fleet detected the same impossible reading at the same moment. Something was approaching from behind a distant gas cloud. Something so large that the computers struggled to process the data. The first thought many observers had was that their equipment had malfunctioned. Sensors could not possibly be showing an artificial object that size. The first vessel emerged from behind the gas cloud like a mountain rising from the ocean. It was spherical, covered in weapons, platforms, and shield generators, with engines that burned like captured stars. Its surface was gray and silver, marked with massive human symbols and identification numbers. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so enormous. That is the size of a small moon, whispered the Valari observer, its ancient voice filled with something it had not felt in millennia, fear. But the first vessel was not alone. A second moon-sized warship emerged behind it, then a third, then a fourth. They kept coming, one after another, in a line that stretched across the visible horizon of space. Each one was slightly different in design, but all shared the same impossible scale. Some had extra weapon platforms. Others had landing bays large enough to swallow entire fleets. A few had strange structures on their surfaces that no alien observer could identify. Admiral Krex's mandibles hung open in shock. His flagship, which he had always considered massive and powerful, looked like an insect next to these vessels. He could not speak. He could not move. He could only watch as more and more of these impossible ships emerged from the darkness. We count 27 of them, reported one of his officers in a trembling voice. Each one approximately 3,000 kilometers in diameter. Admiral, their combined mass exceeds several planets. The communication channel exploded with voices. Every species was talking at once, demanding explanations, expressing disbelief. Some simply screaming in primal terror. In all the millions of years of galactic history, no species had ever built anything like this. The very concept of a moon-sized warship was considered impossible. The resources required, the engineering challenges, the time needed to construct such vessels. It should not be possible. AmbassadorChuns.com, voice cut through the chaos. Ladies and gentlemen of the Galactic Council, I present to you the Titan fleet of the United Human Nations. 27 mobile battle stations, each capable of matching the entire military output of any species in this council. Impossible, Admiral Krex finally managed to say. You have only been a spacefaring species for 50 years. The construction of even one such vessel would take thousands of years. We work fast when we are motivated, Chen replied, and we had very good motivation. As I mentioned, we found the ancient warnings. We knew what was coming, so we built what was necessary to stop it. The Valari observer floated closer to the nearest Titan. Its ancient senses studied the vessel's construction, trying to understand how humans had achieved this miracle. What it found made it even more confused. The ships were not built from exotic alien materials or technologies stolen from more advanced species. They were made from the same basic elements that humans use for everything else. Iron, carbon, silicon, titanium. Common materials worked with uncommon skill. How did you hide this from us? The Valari asked. Our sensors monitor all construction activities in the galaxy. We should have detected these vessels during their construction. You never looked at our asteroid belt, Chen explained. You've never investigated our outer planets. You considered us unimportant, so you did not watch us closely. We hollowed out asteroids and used them as construction yards. We mined the rings of Saturn. We captured comets and extracted their resources. Everything we needed was in our own solar system, and you were too busy watching each other to notice what we were doing. The Morax trade minister made rapid calculations. The materials you purchased from our markets. You claimed they were for construction projects. You never lied, but you never told the truth either. Those materials were components for these ships. Advanced targeting systems, exotic power cores, shield technologies beyond what we could make ourselves, Chen confirmed. You sold them to us without asking questions. We appreciated your lack of curiosity. Admiral Krex stared at the Titan fleet with new understanding. These humans were not the simple primitives he had always assumed. They were strategists who had planned decades ahead. They had hidden the greatest military construction project in galactic history right under the noses of ancient civilizations. Why did you not tell us? Krex asked. Why build in secret? If you had shared this technology, we could have prepared together. Chen's response was quiet but powerful. Because you would have stopped us, you would have seen us as a threat. Young species are not supposed to have this kind of power. If the Council knew what we were building, you would have come to Earth with your fleets and destroyed everything before we could finish. We had to work alone because you would never have trusted us to work with you. The truth of his words hung in the silence. The ancient powers of the galaxy had always viewed young species with suspicion. They limited their growth, controlled their expansion, and prevented them from developing technologies that could challenge the established order. If humans had asked permission to build moon-sized warships, the answer would have been swift and violent denial. Now it was too late for denial. The Titan fleet existed. 27 vessels, each one capable of devastating entire star systems, and they belonged to the species that everyone had dismissed as irrelevant primitives. A new transmission arrived from human command. The unknown invaders had broken through the outer defenses. They were moving toward the core worlds of the Council. The Krath Empire's main fleet had engaged them but was suffering catastrophic losses. In a matter of days, the invaders would reach Xanthos Prime itself. We can stop them, Ambassador Chen said. But first, we need the Council to do something it has never done before. We need you to trust humans. We need you to let us lead this fight. Admiral Krex looked at the Titan fleet one more time. He thought about his people, his empire, everything he had spent his life protecting. Then he made the hardest decision of his career. On behalf of the Krath Empire, I surrender command of our fleets to human authority. Tell us what to do, Ambassador Chen. Tell us how to survive this nightmare. One by one, other species followed his lead. The Valari, the Morax, dozens of civilizations that had never agreed on anything suddenly united behind the youngest species in the galaxy. Because the youngest species had built gods of war, and gods of war were exactly what the galaxy needed. The Titan fleet moved through space like a pack of ancient predators awakening from a long sleep. At the head of the formation flew the flagship, a vessel named Terra's Fury. Its commander was Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, a woman who had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. She had been among the first to read the ancient warnings about the invaders. She had overseen the construction of the first Titan, and now she was leading humanity's greatest creation into the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen. The bridge of Terra's Fury was a massive chamber built into the core of the ship. Thousands of crew members worked at stations arranged in circles around the central command platform. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the Allied fleet. Red markers indicated the location of the enemy. The markers were spreading like a disease across the map. Status report. Admiral Okonkwo commanded, the Krath Empire's third fleet has been destroyed, reported her tactical officer. Enemy forces have taken the Vegas system. Civilian evacuation is still in progress. Estimated survivors, less than 40%. Okonkwo's face remained calm, but her hands tightened on the railing in front of her. Millions of lives had already been lost. Millions more would die before this was over. The invaders showed no interest in negotiation, no desire for surrender, no hesitation in their advance. They destroyed everything in their path, with cold efficiency. The Allied fleet gathered around the Titan, fleet like small fish seeking protection from a school of whales. Krath battleships, Valari energy cruisers, Morax trading frigates hastily converted for combat. Over 50,000 vessels from 100 different species, all looking to humans for leadership. Captain Lyra Vasquez had been given command of one of the scouting squadrons. Her ship, the Curiosity, had been upgraded with new weapons and shields. But it still felt small compared to the monsters they were about to face. She had seen the enemy up close. She knew what they were capable of, Admiral. She transmitted to Terra's Fury. I have updated intelligence on the enemy formation. They are aware of our approach. Their central command vessel is moving to meet us. Okonkwo studied the data Vasquez had sent. The enemy command vessel was the massive object that had been detected during the first sighting. Now, with better sensors and closer range, they could see it clearly for the first time. It was a sphere of absolute darkness, approximately 5,000 kilometers in diameter, larger than any Titan, larger than most inhabited moons. It absorbed all light that touched its surface, making it visible only as a hole in the starfield behind it. Weapons fire had no effect on it. Missiles vanished into its surface without causing any damage. Nobody knew what it was made of or how it worked. The dark sphere, Vasquez said. That is what my crew has been calling it. I believe it is the heart of their fleet. If we can destroy it, the other ships might stop functioning, or they might become even more aggressive. Okonkwo replied. We cannot make assumptions about an enemy we do not understand, but I agree that the dark sphere should be our primary target. She turned to face the holographic image of Ambassador Chen, who was observing from Zenthos Prime. The council had demanded to watch the battle in real time. They wanted to see what their new protectors could do. Ambassador informed the council that we are beginning our approach. Tell them to pray to whatever gods they believe in. Tell them that humanity will not fail them. Chen nodded and closed the connection. Okonkwo took a deep breath and began giving orders that would shape the future of the galaxy. All Titans, activate primary weapon systems. Standard ships, form defensive screens around each Titan. Targeting data is being transmitted to all vessels. Remember your training. Remember why we built these ships. Today we prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. Terra's fury began to glow as its power systems reached full capacity. Across the fleet, 26 other Titans did the same. The combined energy output was greater than a small star. Sensors across the galaxy detected the power surge and wondered what was happening. The enemy responded to the challenge. 10,000 dark ships changed course and accelerated toward the Allied fleet. At their center, the dark sphere pulsed with terrible energy. Something was awakening inside it. Something that had destroyed countless civilizations before humanity existed. Admiral Krex watched from his damaged flagship. His crew had barely survived their first encounter with the enemy. Half his officers were dead. His shields were failing. But he refused to retreat. He wanted to see what humans could do with their impossible ships. They are brave, he told his surviving officers. Whatever else we say about humans after this day, we must remember that they are brave. They built weapons to fight gods, and now they are marching against those gods without hesitation. The two fleets closed the distance between them. At 1 million kilometers, the enemy opened fire. Beams of dark energy cut across space, destroying dozens of Allied ships in the first seconds. The smaller vessels died instantly. Even the heavily armored battleships lasted only a few moments longer. Then the Titans returned fire. Terra's fury unleashed its main weapon, a beam of concentrated gravitational energy that could crush planets into dust. The beam struck the leading enemy ships and tore them apart like paper in a hurricane. Other Titans fired their own weapons, each one different, each one devastating. Plasma cannons that burned hotter than suns, missile barrages that numbered in the millions, kinetic projectiles accelerated to nearly light speed. The enemy fleet that had seemed unstoppable suddenly found itself facing an equal force. Ships that had laughed off craft weapons now exploded under human firepower. The Dark Invaders tried to adapt, to change their formations, to find weaknesses in the Titan fleet's defenses. But humans had spent 50 years planning for this battle. They had considered every possibility, prepared for every tactic. Focus fire on the Dark Sphere, Okonkwo ordered. All Titans, coordinate your attacks. We end this now. 27 moon-sized warships turned their weapons toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The dark sphere pulsed again, and a wave of energy swept outward. Several smaller Allied ships were caught in the wave and vanished without a trace. But the Titans held firm. Their shields, designed specifically to counter this enemy, absorbed the attack and converted it into additional power shields holding at 92%, reported the defensive officer on Terra's Fury. We can take several more of those attacks. Then let us make sure we do not have to, Okonkwo replied. Fire everything. Give that sphere a taste of human determination. The universe lit up with weapons, fire. Every Titan unleashed its full arsenal at the dark sphere simultaneously. The combined attack was visible from light years away. Stars dimmed by comparison. The space itself seemed to crack under the strain of so much concentrated destruction. For the first time since the invasion began, the dark sphere stopped advancing. Its surface rippled and distorted. Strange sounds emerged from it. Sounds that no instrument should have been able to detect in the vacuum of space. Sounds that seemed like screaming. We heard it, Vasquez reported in amazement. Admiral, we actually heard it. Okonkwo allowed herself a small smile. Then we can kill it. All ships, continue the attack. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's family. The battle for the future of civilization had begun, and humanity was winning. The battle raged for 3 days. Both fleets took devastating losses. The Allied forces lost over 30,000 ships and millions of lives. The Titan fleet lost 2 of its members. Mighty vessels cracked open and left drifting in the void. But the enemy suffered far worse. More than 8,000 of their dark ships had been destroyed. Their advance had stopped. For the first time in their ancient history, they were being pushed back. Admiral Okonkwo had not slept since the fighting began. She survived on stimulants and pure willpower. Her bridge crew worked in rotating shifts, but she refused to leave her post. Every decision she made meant life or death for thousands of beings. She could not afford to rest. The Dark Sphere had become the focus of the entire conflict. Every attempt to destroy it had failed. The Titans had hit it with enough firepower to shatter worlds, but it always recovered. Its surface would crack and tear, revealing something terrible beneath, but then it would heal and continue fighting. Whatever controlled the enemy fleet lived inside that sphere, and it was not dying easily. "We need a new strategy," Captain Vasquez said during an emergency conference. Her face was hollow with exhaustion, and her uniform was stained with the blood of crew members she had tried to save during an attack. "Direct assault is not working. The sphere has some kind of regeneration ability that we cannot overcome. Our scientists believe the sphere draws energy from another dimension," added the Valari observer, who had remained with the fleet as a liaison. "It may be impossible to destroy using conventional weapons. The more energy we pour into it, the more it has available for regeneration. Then we starve it," Okonkwo said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. The Admiral was staring at the tactical display, watching the Dark Sphere pulse with stolen energy. Her eyes held a dangerous light that made even Admiral Krex nervous. "Explain," the Kreth commander requested. "The sphere needs energy to regenerate. It absorbs our attacks and uses them to heal. But what if we denied it that energy? What if we contained it completely, cut it off from all external sources?" The Valari observer considered this. Theoretically possible, but the containment field would need to be enormous. Nothing in our combined arsenals could generate such a barrier. "The Titans can," Okonkwo replied. "Not their weapons, their engines. Each Titan carries a gravitic drive core capable of warping spacetime. If we position them correctly and link their cores together, we can create a bubble of folded space around the sphere. Nothing in, nothing out. No energy, no matter, no reinforcements. That would require shutting down the engines of every Titan simultaneously," her chief engineer protested. "We would lose all mobility. If the plan fails, we would be helpless targets. Then we make sure the plan does not fail." She began issuing orders. The remaining 25 Titans started maneuvering into a complex formation around the Dark Sphere. The other Allied ships intensified their attacks on the remaining enemy fleet, drawing attention away from what the Titans were doing. Admiral Krex led the distraction force personally, his damaged flagship at the front of the charge. The Dark Sphere seemed to sense that something was wrong. It began firing on the Titans directly, focusing all its terrible power on preventing them from completing their formation. 2 more Titans took critical damage. One of them, a vessel named Humanity's Hope, suffered a core breach that killed half its crew instantly. "We cannot hold position," reported the captain of Humanity's Hope. "Our engines are failing. We are being pushed out of formation." "Hold as long as you can," Okonkwo replied. "Every second counts." Terra's Fury took a direct hit from the Dark Sphere. The entire ship shook, and several decks collapsed under the impact. Warning alarms screamed throughout the vessel. The main display flickered and died for several terrifying seconds before backup systems kicked in. "Shields at 41%, the defensive officer reported. "We cannot take many more hits like that." "We only need 1 more minute," Okonkwo said. "All Titans, prepare for synchronized engine shutdown on my mark." 23 Titan captains confirmed their readiness. 2 Titans were too damaged to participate but would contribute what they could. The formation was not perfect, but it would have to be enough. The Dark Sphere fired again, and this time it struck Terra's Fury's engine section. The flagship shuddered and began listing to one side. Emergency crews rushed to seal breaches and contain fires. In the chaos, Admiral Okonkwo remained perfectly still, watching the countdown timer on her remaining display. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Mark 25. Gravitic drive core shut down simultaneously. The energy they had been using for propulsion was rerouted into the largest spatial manipulation field ever created. Reality itself bent around the Dark Sphere. Light curved in impossible directions. Time seemed to slow near the forming barrier. The Dark Sphere reacted with what could only be described as panic. It unleashed wave after wave of energy, trying to break the forming containment, but there was nothing to absorb. The barrier reflected everything back inward. For the first time since it had crossed into this galaxy, the Dark Sphere was completely alone. "Containment stable," reported the science officer on Terra's Fury. "The sphere is isolated. No energy is reaching it." Inside the barrier, the Dark Sphere began to change. Its surface cracked and did not heal. The absolute darkness started fading, revealing structures beneath that looked almost biological. Something massive writhed inside the sphere. Something that had existed for billions of years and had never known defeat. It was dying. The remaining enemy ships reacted to their master's distress. They abandoned their attacks on the Allied fleet and rushed toward the containment barrier, trying to break through from the outside. But the Titans held firm, and the Allied ships cut down the attackers before they could interfere. "The sphere's energy readings are dropping," Vasquez reported from her position in the outer battle. "Whatever is inside there, it is weakening. The containment is working." Hours passed. The dark sphere shrank as it consumed its own mass in a desperate attempt to survive. The writhing shapes inside became still. The strange screaming sounds faded into silence. Finally, the sphere collapsed entirely, leaving nothing behind but a cloud of dark particles that slowly dispersed into the void. The remaining enemy ships stopped moving. Without the dark sphere to command them, they drifted aimlessly, their weapons falling silent. Some simply powered down and went dark. Others began flying in random patterns before eventually running out of fuel and going still. "Confirmed kill," announced the tactical officer on Terra's Fury. "The dark sphere has been destroyed. Enemy fleet is no longer operational." For a moment, there was silence across the Allied communication network. Then the cheering began. Krath warriors roared in triumph. Valari energy beings pulsed with colors of joy. Morax traders calculated the value of salvage rights with happy precision. Beings who had never thought they would survive the week celebrated together across the void of space. Admiral Okonkwo finally allowed herself to sit down. Her legs were shaking. Her hands trembled, but she was smiling. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Terra's Fury was heavily damaged. Half the Titans needed extensive repairs. Millions had died in the battle. But the galaxy was safe. The ancient enemy that had threatened all life had been destroyed by the youngest species in the Council. Humanity had kept its promise. The great assembly hall on Xenthos Prime had never been so crowded. Representatives from every known species packed the massive chamber. Many stood in the aisles because there were no seats left. Others watched from screens mounted on the walls. The entire galaxy had stopped to witness this moment. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo walked down the central aisle toward the speaker's platform. She wore a new uniform, crisp and decorated with medals that the Council had created specifically for this occasion. Behind her walked the surviving captains of the Titan fleet, each one carrying the flag of a vessel that had fought in the Battle of the Dark Sphere. Some of those flags had holes burned through them. Some were stained with smoke and blood. All of them were carried with pride. The Valari Elder Zethara floated at the front of the hall. Its ancient form shimmered with colors that other species had never seen before. When it spoke, its voice carried to every corner of the chamber. 12 million years ago, this council was founded to protect the galaxy from threats beyond imagination. We believed we had seen everything. We believed we were prepared for any danger. We were wrong. The Elder paused, letting its words sink in. The enemy that emerged from beyond the rim was something from our earliest records, a destroyer of civilizations, a consumer of stars, an evil so ancient that most of us had forgotten it ever existed. It came to end us, and it very nearly succeeded. The greatest powers in this council, the oldest and mightiest among us, fell before its advance like leaves before a storm. Admiral Krex lowered his massive head. His people had lost nearly a quarter of their military in the early battles. The shame of those defeats would haunt the Krath Empire for generations. But where the ancient failed, the young succeeded. Humanity, a species we dismissed as primitive, as unimportant, as too young to matter, built weapons that saved us all. They worked in secret because we gave them no choice. They prepared alone because we would not have trusted them to prepare with us. And when the moment came, they did not ask for thanks or rewards. They simply fought for every species in this galaxy, including the ones that had looked down on them. Zethara turned to face Admiral Okonkwo on behalf of the Galactic Council. On behalf of every civilization that still exists because of human courage, we offer our deepest gratitude. You have earned a place of honor that no species has held since the founding of this assembly. Okonkwo stepped forward to address the council. She looked out at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Some were still afraid of humanity. Others were filled with admiration. A few seemed to be considering how they could use this new relationship for their own benefit. She had expected all of these reactions. "Thank you for your kind words," she began. "But I did not come here to accept praise. I came here to make sure that the lessons of this war are not forgotten." The chamber fell silent. This was not the humble acceptance speech they had expected. For 50 years, humanity worked alone because this council gave us no other choice. You saw us as children, as primitives, as a species too young to understand the galaxy's dangers. You limited our expansion, controlled our technology, and watched us with suspicion whenever we tried to grow. If we had asked for help preparing for this enemy, you would have laughed at us. If we had asked for resources, you would have denied them. So we stopped asking and started building. She let those words hang in the air before continuing. The Titan fleet was not built to conquer the galaxy. It was built to protect it. Every design choice, every weapon system, every defensive measure was created with one goal in mind: to keep everyone safe, including the species that treated us as lesser beings. That is who we are. That is who we choose to be. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but protectors. Admiral Krex raised his head and looked at the human admiral with new respect. He had spent his entire career fighting enemies. He understood what it meant to sacrifice for others. But protection requires trust, Okonkwo continued. It requires cooperation. It requires a willingness to see other species as equals, regardless of how young or old they are. The dark sphere is destroyed, but there may be other threats beyond the rim. There may be dangers we cannot even imagine yet. The galaxy needs to be ready, and that means working together instead of keeping secrets from each other. She turned to address the entire council. Directly, humanity is willing to share the technology behind the Titan fleet. We will teach other species how to build their own massive warships. We will help defend any world that asks for our aid. But in return, we ask to be treated as partners, not as children. We ask for equal representation on this council. We ask for the same rights and opportunities that older species enjoy, not because we demand them, but because we have earned them with the blood of our people. The Morax Trade Minister was the first to respond. The Syndicate of Morax supports this request. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that exceed many ancient civilizations. It would be foolish to continue treating them as a minor species. Admiral Krek spoke next. The Krath Empire owes its survival to human bravery. We support full partnership status for humanity. Let no one question their place among us again. One by one, other species added their voices. The Valari, the crystalline beings of the Outer Arm, the machine intelligences of the processing worlds. Even species that had never spoken to humans before now offered their support. Zethara raised a tendril of light, calling for silence. The council votes in favor. From this day forward, humanity holds the status of elder race, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Let it be recorded in our histories that on this day, the galaxy was reborn through human sacrifice and human triumph. The cheering lasted for hours. Species that had never celebrated together now danced and sang in the halls of Zenthos Prime. Humans were surrounded by beings who wanted to thank them personally, who wanted to shake their hands or tentacles or energy fields. Captain Lyra Vasquez found a quiet corner of the celebration and looked out at the stars. She thought about the friends she had lost in the battle. She thought about the fear she had felt when she first saw the enemy fleet. She thought about the moment when the dark sphere finally collapsed and she realized they had won. Ambassador William Chen found her there. Heavy thoughts for a victory celebration, he observed. I am thinking about what comes next, she replied. We saved the galaxy. Now we have to help rebuild it. That is going to be even harder than fighting, Chen smiled. But we will not be alone this time. The galaxy knows what we are capable of now. They know that when humans make a promise, we keep it. Whatever challenges come next, we will face them together. Vasquez nodded and returned her gaze to the stars. Out there, beyond the edge of known space, the universe continued in its endless mystery. New threats might emerge. New wonders might be discovered. But whatever came, humanity would be ready. They had built moon-sized warships in the darkness. They had defeated an ancient evil that threatened all life. They had earned their place among the stars. And this was just the beginning.